Hi, in the previous video I have explained about different types of statements and if conditionals. How we can write if in different forms that we have seen in the previous video. If you like my videos, you can subscribe to my channel Ishwari Classes and don't forget to share it and like it. Now in this class I will be explaining about nested ifs. What are nested ifs? When you are writing if inside another if, that is called as nested ifs. Now here I have written a syntax for nested ifs. If condition, and then if the condition is true, the statements following it will be executed. If you can also write one more if inside this if, and this if is called as nested ifs. Now according to the requirement of the program, you can write if inside another if. Similarly, you can also write if inside the else portion. Else followed by if, and if the condition is true, these statements will get executed. So this is about nested ifs. When you are writing if inside another if, then it is called as nested ifs. Now we will see an example of nested ifs. Now let us see a program to find the small number, middle number and big number from three numbers using nested ifs. So this is a program to find small, middle and big number from three numbers. For this I have to take three numbers from the user. I have used input function and I have taken enter. I have written enter first number. I am taking the number from the user and converting into integer and storing in number 1. Then I am taking second number, converting into integer and storing in number 2. I am taking third number, converting into integer and storing in number 3. Now you have to check here for three possibilities, whether number 1 is smaller than number 2 and number 3, or number 2 is smaller than number 1 and number 3, or number 3 is smaller than number 1 and number 2. So three possibilities you have to check. Now the first case I am writing here, first possibility I have written here using if number 1 is less than number 2 and number 1 is less than number 3. If it is less than both number 2 and number 3, then you will set variable small to number 1. This is a variable where I am storing the variable small as number 1. Now if number 1 is small, you have to check now what is the middle number between number 2 and number 3. So now you have checked between number 2 and number 3. If number 2 is less than number 3, then you will set mid is equal to number 2 and big number is equal to number 3. Else what you will set? Else mid is equal to number 3 and big is equal to number 2. So this is first case. Similarly, you have to check for another case also, where you will check whether number 2 is less than number 1 and number 3. Same thing you have to write, and what you have, instead of number 1 you have to change it to number 2. If number 2 is less than number 1 and number 2 is less than number 3, then you will set small is equal to number 2. This we will see practically okay. Now I have just I have taken, and suppose if I have taken a number, three numbers from the user. Let us assume that number 1 is 3 and number 2 is 5 and number 3 is 10. So let us see how this works in first case. Yes, number 1 is 3. 3 is less than 5 and 3 is less than 10. Yes, it satisfied both the condition and it will go inside. And what will happen? Small will be set to 3. Small will be set to 3, and then it will check. Next, number 2. 5 is less than number 3, 10. Yes, 5 is less than 10. Yes, it is less than 10. So it will set mid. Mid is equal to 5. And then it will set big is equal to 10. So this condition gets satisfied in this case, and small will be set to 3, mid will be set to 5, and then big will be set to 10. So this is one case, one possibility of writing the condition. Another possibility we will see in the program.
We will see program to check the small number, middle number and big number out of 3 numbers. So you have to take 3 numbers from the user, and I am storing in variable number 1, number 2 and number 3. So here I am taking the numbers from the user using input function. Input, enter first number, and you convert it into integer. As we know, input returns string. You have to convert it into integer and store in variable number 1. Similarly, you take another second number and then you store it in number 2. Then you take third number and store it in number 3, num3 variable. Now you have to compare all these 3 variables, number 1, number 2, number 3 variables, and check which one is the smallest one and middle number and the big number. Now I am comparing here. If number 1 is less than number 2 and number 1 is less than number 3, then you have to set that small variable small is equal to number 1 and number and you have to check next. If number 2 is less than number 3, then middle number is number 2 and big number is number 3. If this condition is false, if number 2 is less than number 3 is false, it means that number 3 is less than number 2, and you have to set the middle number is number 3 and then the big number is number 2. So after checking the first condition, that is if number 1 is less than number 2 and number 3, you have to check. If this condition is false, it will go to the next condition to check whether number 2 is the smallest one. So it will check if number 2 is less than number 1 and if number 2 is less than number 3. It will set small number is equal to number 2. And now you have to check between number 1 and number 3, which one is small. So if number 1 is less than number 3, then the middle number is number 1 and the biggest number is number 3. Else, if this condition is false, then it means that number 3 is the middle number. Okay, so middle number is equal to mid is equal to number 3 and big is equal to number 1. So if this condition is also false, if number 2 is less than number 1 and number 2 is less than number 3, if this condition is also false, then it will go for the final thing. It means that number 3 is the smallest one and now small is set to number 3. Here we have checked whether number 1 is smallest one. Here we have checked if number 2 is the smallest one. If these two conditions are false, it means that number 3 is the smallest one and small is equal to number 3. And then I am checking between number 1 and number 2, which one is the middle number and which one is the biggest number. I am checking and I am assigning the values mid and big. Finally, I am just printing the message. Print small is equal to small, middle is equal to mid and big is equal to big. Now let us run this program and see. Enter the first number. I am just entering 12, second number 34, 67. Small is 12, middle number is 34, and big number is 67. Let us run the program once again. Now 56 first number, then 35, then I give 85. See, small number is 35, middle number is 56, and big number is 85. Now one more time I run the program. This time I'm giving big number first, 56, and then 23. Small number is 23, middle number is 56, and big number is 90. So this is how you have to use the nested ifs. I have used if inside if, another if. Here also in the else if portion, again I have written here if. So here inside this else if, again I have written here if. So this is another nested if. And finally in the else portion also I have included one more nested if. So this is how you have to use nested ifs. Now if you like my videos, you can subscribe to my channel Ishwari Classes, and don't forget to share it to your friends and like the videos. Thank you.